Welcome to the Growth Through Adversity podcast, where men are forged, not coddled. Here we dive deep into the path of true transformation in pursuit of physical, mental, spiritual, and temporal growth. We talk training, nutrition, business, mindset, and spirituality. We embrace strength and we loathe ease. We reject weakness in every form and cultivate power, the will to power itself. This is the rebirth of modern man. Raw masculinity, tempered by reason, virtue, and right action, because nothing of value is earned without sacrifice. Let's begin our apotheosis together. Welcome to another episode of the Growth Through Adversity podcast with your host, Ragnar the Warwolf. What is up, people? We are going to talk about peptides today. This was specifically requested by a few of my clients. So we're going to go over it all. So I'm going to cover three main categories. We're going to cover the recovery peptides. We're going to cover the GLP-1s, the GLPs, I guess, peptides. And we're going to cover the metabolic rebuild peptide. So that, there's a million different peptides out there. And, all a peptide is a string of amino acids that can be configured in different ways to have different actions in the body. So we're going to go over a few common ones this is like the future of medicine. This is the future of medicine. This is the future of optimization, of training. Without a doubt, we are on like the cutting edge precipice of it. And in fact, a lot of this stuff is not even completely approved by the FDA yet. It's in trials. It goes back and forth. But it is absolutely going to change the medical industry. And I think most of the resistance towards peptides is that it's going to change the medical industry. And things like orthopedic surgeons and pain medications and anti-inflammation medications and all the stuff that is a multi-billion-dollar industry is going to slowly get supplanted and replaced by peptides. So I think there's a lot of resistance from big pharma because there's going to be a lot of money that's redistributed in this process. But it's so much more efficient. You know what I mean? So the medical world just quietly broke a record that really nobody's talking about, right? There was a phase 3 clinical trial which showed participants losing an average of 28.7%. These were obese subjects of their body weight in 68 weeks. That's not surgery. That's not a crash diet. That's a peptide, right? And so that's like, if you think about that, that's 30% of their body mass. That's insane. Weight loss is just the most visible part of what's happening in the peptide science right now. And today we're breaking down, like I said, the three classes, and we're going to show you a couple of ones that can be super useful. So we've got the GLP-1. Specifically, we're going to lean into Retatrutide today because it's a triple agonist and it's making everything else look like a warm-up, right? So the old GLPs really can't, even Gen 2 really cannot compare to what Retatrutide is going to do for the world. MOTS-c is really important. This is something that occurs naturally in your body. A lot of peptides do occur naturally in your body, just in insufficient amounts, right? Your body stops making enough of it as you age, and it really creates a lot of problems and leads to a lot of downstream metabolic issues. And then we got the recovery stack. So we've got BPC-1. These are the ones that are probably the most famous and most well-known. So we've got BPC-157, we've got TB-500, and my personal favorite that I've recently started messing around with is the Glow Blend. And that's kind of a mix of a few different ones that play on a few different actions. And this is the infrastructure your body needs to rebuild itself while you transform. So let's go ahead and get into it. So from semaglutide to Retatrutide, this is our first section here. And this is going to be like, there's really no comparison, right? So a brief evolution is that semaglutide, Ozempic, Wegovy are probably the more common names, comes out and it's a GLP-1 agonist, right? So it acts on the GLP-1 receptor. It suppresses appetite. Fantastic for weight loss. Changed the conversation, right? People that have been struggling with their weight for years were able to lose weight. And a lot of people that were really good candidates for things like bariatric surgery were able to lose it instead with basically a very simple medication peptide shot, right? But there was a lot. So all it acted on was the GLP-1 agonist or on the GLP-1 receptor. So all it did was suppress appetite. Which suppressing appetite, it's not an ineffective way to lose weight, but it's also not necessarily the healthiest or the most effective way to lose weight. So then we see generation two. So tirzepatide, more commonly known as Mounjaro or Zepbound. These are still the ones that are prescribed regularly, because these are the ones that have full FDA approval right now. And these are dual agonists, right? So they're a lot better. They work on the GLP-1 and the GIP receptors, right? So we doubled down on two mechanisms, got better outcomes. So rather than just suppressing appetite, we also started playing with how the body regulates glucose and how the body is efficiency in utilizing insulin. And we had much better, much healthier, much more sustainable results, right? So both are legitimate, but essentially they're a warm up to what came next, right? And now we enter the age of retatrutide, right? And this is like the FDA is being really, really difficult about this one, but it's still pretty readily accessible for people that want it. And it's a triple agonist, right? So it hits three receptors simultaneously, both the old ones, the GLP-1, the GIP, and the glucagon receptor. And that really, it's the glucagon receptor that makes this a completely different class of molecule. Like this is, like I said, it really cannot be compared to the old ones. So it really quickly, GLP-1 suppresses appetite. It also slows gastric emptying, and it improves insulin response. So people that are insulin resistant can get a little bit better insulin response, right? So like I said, very effective. GIP enhances fat metabolism. It works synergistically with the GLP-1s on satiety and insulin, right? So it increases your body's ability to metabolize fat effectively. So those two play together really well. And then glucagon, this is where the game changer, right? So this actually increases your metabolic rate. It increases energy expenditure and it drives hepatic fat metabolism. So, and what's cool about this is like with fatty liver disease and a lot of other metabolic conditions, this can be very effective when paired with the other two mechanisms to begin to repair some of the damage in your body. So now we're not just focused on weight loss and that benefit on your health. We're focused on actually repairing the metabolism at a cellular level, which is like why this drug is a game changer and why literally retatrutide, mark my words, is going to be $1 trillion drug. Its potential is totally untapped now, and it's going to change the world. So the glucagon component is why retatrutide is like in a whole different league. Most people think of glucagon as the opposite of insulin, but at the receptor level, it's activation alongside GLP-1 creates a metabolic environment that literally nothing can replicate. So it creates a metabolic environment that is conducive to metabolic healing and conducive to fat loss at a level that literally nothing can replicate, right? And that's why like the danger with retatrutide and that we're already seeing in like bodybuilding circles is that people will abuse it at super high doses just so that they can eat whatever the fuck they want and maintain like an unhealthily lean physique, right? So with everything there comes a cost, and there is definitely, and these are young drugs, so we don't know exactly the long-term effects. But what we have found from other drugs similar to them, peptides, the more traditional anabolic steroids, is that dose matters a lot when it comes to side effect management, right? So the harder you push these doses and the more you push things and the more you take things to an extreme with the more likely you are to have some of the negative downstream side effects, right? Now, that's not to say these aren't without any risk. Again, they're very well researched in up to 68 weeks, right? But we don't know exactly what's going to happen longer term than that, but we never know what's going to happen longer term than that. And I guarantee you that obesity, and metabolic disorders, diabetes, heart disease, those kind of things will kill you much faster than anything that these are going to do to you. So like, especially for people that are obese, the cost to reward or the threat to reward ratio, to me, it's not even a question, right? If you're morbidly obese, it is infinitely safer to take these drugs than to be morbidly obese, because there are so many things that can kill you when you're morbidly obese that it's not even a question. For people that are leaner and want to take these to optimize performance and optimize fat loss for other reasons, like, then that's something you kind of have to reflect on yourself. But I will say that they are, like I said, very well researched up to 68 weeks, and they were researched up to 68 weeks at a fucking really, really high dose compared to what most people taking them for a performance dose. So, for example, like retatrutide was studied at 12 milligrams a week, whereas most of the people that I know that take it don't take over 2 milligrams a week. So that take it for performance reasons, not sheer just fat loss. So if that gives you context, so you're taking, a tiny margin of a tiny fraction of the dose that it was studied at. So it makes it, in my opinion, much safer. So clinical data. So more than 9 out of 10 participants lost 10% of their baseline weight. Nearly 2/3 lost 20% or more, and nearly half lost 25% or more, and a quarter lost over 30% or more. This was done by the New England Journal of Medicine. This was a really good peer-reviewed study with really good controls and a really good with a lot of participants. And so you had a really good grouping there. And it had really good, like I said, those are like, you just don't see those kind of results, right? So phase 2 average weight loss, 24.2%, published in the New England Journal of Medicine. Phase 3 average of 28.7%, lost at the 68 weeks on a 12 milligram dose. Again, so 58.6% of the participants on the 12 milligram dose achieved 25% weight loss. So half of them achieved 25%. 39% achieved 30% weight loss. So these are absolutely crazy numbers. And the average for context of weight, the average pounds weight lost was 71 pounds. So this is massive in 68 weeks. That's a pretty quick turnaround to lose 71 pounds at that large of a population group. So beyond weight loss, there's a metabolic cascade that happens with these drugs. So number one, A1C. The A1C numbers were reduced by 1.3 to 2% in diabetic patients. So this is literally comparable to the best diabetic drugs on the market right now, right? And this is just something we saw in all of the population. And then liver fat reduction, like we were talking about earlier, fatty liver disease. Phase 2 in Nature Medicine showed 82.4% reduction in liver fat content. So at 24 weeks, normal liver fat, 5%, was achieved by 86% of the participants on that 12 milligram per dose, compared to 0% with the placebo. So 0% had a reduction in that liver fat, because it doesn't just go away. That's the problem with fatty liver disease. And also being studied for obstructive sleep apnea, knee osteoarthritis, cardiovascular outcomes, etc. And chronic low back pain also demonstrated significant relief in all of these departments. Obviously, losing that amount of weight is going to help, but there was also an element of metabolic repair and of a reduction of inflammation in the body that also made a big difference with that. So side effects, obviously, like, I don't want to just like hype this up and tell you, and not tell you the other side of it, right? So the most common side effects were gastrointestinal. So, and they're real. They were real. A lot of people had severe nausea, diarrhea, constipation, consistent with all of these type of therapies in the past. That's not something new to retatrutide. We saw that in all the other GLP-1 drugs and GLP-2 drugs. Dysthesia, so tingling, burning sensation, appeared in a notable percentage at the higher dosage. It was generally very mild, and it was rarely causing a discontinuation, right? So a little bit of tingling, burning sensations. And then so what we found was titration is crucial. So starting at 2 milligrams, so starting on a low dose and then titrating it up every 4 weeks dramatically reduces the side effect burden, because it allows your body to acclimate to the drug, right? So that was huge. If you just jumped into the 12 milligrams, like, you were having horrible side effects. If you titrated up, your body was able to adapt to it and you had a lot less of them. But either way, we didn't see any really severe side effects. Like I said, these are mostly discomfort type side effects, diarrhea, constipation, things of that nature. Not super fun, but also not going to end your life by any means. Now, with any dramatic weight loss, and you can ask anybody that's had bariatric surgery, that can tell you, with aggressive fat loss, we always worry about lean muscle mass, right? So the preservation of lean muscle mass requires, again, and we talk about this all the time, resistance training with adequate stimulus. So not just going to the gym and lifting 5-pound dumbbells for 20 reps and a ton of reps in reserve. It means training basically to failure or close to failure at heavy loads in an ideal rep range, and then eating adequate amounts of protein, which, when your appetite's suppressed, can be a problem. But it's something that you just have to make non-negotiable, because those are the two pillars that are going to maintain muscle mass on your body: stimulus from really hard resistance training and high levels of protein, 1 gram per pound of lean body mass or more when you're on these drugs, without a doubt. So let's move on to the next. MOTS-c, the metabolic repair peptide. This is a big one. So what is MOTS-c? The full name is mitochondrial open reading frame of the 12SN RNA type C. Totally irrelevant name, but it's a string of 16 amino acids peptide. It's encoded by your nuclear DNA, but not by your nuclear DNA, but by your mitochondrial genome. So this was discovered in 2015. It was published in Cell Metabolism, and it upended the assumption that mitochondria were just power generators, right? So it kind of changed our idea of how things work at a cellular level. MOTS-c is your mitochondria communicating with the rest of your body. It's a hormone-like signal from the cellular energy system itself. So that's really big when you think about it. MOTS-c regulates insulin sensitivity and metabolic homeostasis. So homeostasis is just a fancy way of saying internal balance. And its primary target organ appears to be skeletal muscle. Fascinatingly, not all that much though when we're talking about glucose and muscle is what receives the energy, which your body needs to move the energy around a lot of times. So it does make sense. What it does, primary target is your skeletal muscles. It enhances glucose uptake and it improves insulin sensitivity. So it enhances your body's ability to uptake glucose, to utilize glucose for energy rather than just having it float around in your bloodstream, causing high blood sugar. And it improves insulin sensitivity, which is then going to make your body more sensitive to insulin. And insulin is the molecule that carries glucose into your cells. So it's attacking on two fronts very effectively. Mechanism, it inhibits the folate cycle, triggers ACIR, and activates the AMPK circuit, which is basically AMPK activation is the same thing that happens when you go to the gym and train, and it's why going to the gym and training improves your insulin sensitivity. So this plays on the same pathways that we already know have that effect on the body. You can think of it like a switch. It's like exercise in a molecule, right? So it flips the same metabolic switches as exercise do. And we've already studied the benefits of exercise exponentially. I mean, there is myriad studies that show that your best long-term health insurance is resistance training. Like it's not anything else. It's not cardio. It's resistance training. It's building up your muscles, your bones, all that stuff has a massive effect on downstream health, right? And so MOTS-c interestingly activates the same pathways through molecular channels, right? So it's upregulated significantly during actual exercise. MOTS-c does basically the same thing. And it shows roughly basically a 12-fold increase in skeletal muscle MOTS-c after exercise, right? So now the problem with this is that it's an age-dependent decline. So MOTS-c levels in plasma and skeletal muscle decline with age, right? This is documented extensively. And there's also kids that are born deficient of MOTS-c and they have a natural deficiency and they have a tendency to trend towards obesity, right? So those are like the genetic cases where no matter what they do, they still end up obese, right? So lower MOTS-c has been measured in type 2 diabetic individuals, obese children, adolescents, and those with regular coronary dysfunction, right? So research in Nature Communications 2021 showed exogenous MOTS-c significantly enhances physical performance in young, middle-aged, and old mice. So it doesn't matter how old they are, it enhances physical performance and it begins to repair some of those things that were causing the issues in the first place. So human exercise trials confirm that MOTS-c raises skeletal muscle circulation after exercise. It's genuine. It absolutely mimics exercise, right? Additional benefits say that cardiovascular research shows MOTS-c restores mitochondrial respiration in diabetic heart tissue, anti-aging. It reduces cellular stress and pancreatic cells that are potentially slowing the progression of diabetes. It's anti-inflammatory. It reduces your immune response. It reduces oxidative stress markers. The list goes on and on. This thing is absolutely this is a major repair drug at the cellular level of metabolic function, right? Which is really like what I've found in years of research and in years of kind of like just working with different people with different issues is that your core metabolic function is the essence of your overall health, right? So if you have if things are out of whack at the metabolic and cellular level, it's going to translate into all the other elements of your life, and it's going to express itself as all kinds of other issues and dysfunctions, and and just all kinds of other problems that are going to continue. They're going to be progressive. They're going to get worse and worse with time. It's why I'm so big on blood work. It's why I do my own blood work 4 times a year. It's why I have Katie do hers at least twice a year. Because like your blood work tells you what's going on inside, and really, man, what's going on inside at like a metabolic and a cardiovascular level is really going to determine how healthy you are, how long you live, and how, more important than that to me, your quality of life and your health span. Because like I don't want to live to fucking 90 and have 30 years of those 30 years of that life like bedridden and in a fucking walker and in and out of hospitals and on a bucket full of medication. Like I have watched family members do that, and I don't want to do it. You know what I mean? Like I'm active. I'm vital. Like that is so tied to my identity that I couldn't imagine a life other than that. So, yeah, I want to make sure that I'm able to maintain that. And like to me, when health span ends, like quality of life ends. To me, you know what I mean? And that's, people have different opinions on that, but that's just my opinion on it, right? So, um, now why would we stack Retatrutide and MOTS-c, right? Because this is a super stack, right? So Retatrutide is attacking fat loss from a hormonal and an appetite standpoint, from the top down, right? Well, MOTS-c is rebuilding the metabolic machinery at a cellular level, bottom up, right? So we're attacking from two fronts again. The concern with aggressive GLP-1 driven fat loss is, again, lean muscle mass loss, that's again, we talked about how important that is for long-term health. MOTS-c primary target is skeletal muscle metabolism, right? So this has the opposite effect. It maintains that. It pushes glucogen and pushes glucose into your muscles. It makes them more effective and efficient at utilizing glucose, so you're able to train harder, work harder, and more efficiently, right? So it improves glucose uptake in muscle tissue, which is critical in your when you're in a caloric deficit. So that's the other cool part of MOTS-c, is the limited amount of calories that you're eating in a caloric deficit. Even say an aggressive caloric deficit of so let's say you're in 1,000 calorie deficit, right? So everything you're eating is getting utilized, right? Especially from a glucose standpoint, everything is getting pushed into muscle cells and it's getting used as energy, or pushed into your brain and used as energy. So none of it's being wasted, and none of it's circulating around in your blood and causing those ugly spikes in blood glucose that cause all kinds of metabolic conditions long term. So together, you're not just losing weight. You're performing basically a metabolic overhaul, and you're burning fat while upgrading the engine. That's how I look at it. MOTS-c rebuilds the engine. Retatrutide helps like optimize the process of fat loss. MOTS-c is fixing the metabolic engine, so you have better longevity and are able to do this at a more fundamental level for a longer amount of time, right? So section 3, this went a little bit longer than I had intended here, but I'm going to go ahead and hammer through this either way, because we made it here. I don't want to put this off. So the recovery stack. So everybody's fucking tore up. Everybody's injured. So that this has been a dream, you know what I mean? Of like, what can we do to optimize our recovery? And so BPC 157, TB 500, and I personally have switched over to Glow, which is a blend of all of the recovery peptides in one. This is what you're looking for. So why these recovery peptides work and why they belong in a stack. When your body is in an aggressive fat loss or metabolic change, heavy resistance training, the physical demand on tissue is significant, right? So joints, tendon, fascia, gut lining, that's something that's overlooked, is their effect on the gut. They need this dedicated support. So think of these recovery peptides as like the infrastructure, right? They protect the investment you're making with these metabolic peptides, right? They're the infrastructure that allows you to rebuild these tissues that are getting broken down and aren't getting rebuilt effectively like muscle. That's the thing. When you damage muscle in training, it heals in a couple of weeks. When you damage tendons in training, it heals over a couple of months. And if you're training hard week in, week out, especially if you're not working with a coach like me and you're not periodizing your work and you're not going through different phases and different cycles, and you're just like going to the gym and training as hard as you possibly can till you're fucking dead on the floor, and then you're doing it again over and over and over again. Well, your muscles might adapt to that to some extent, but your tendons aren't. They're getting broken down, broken down, broken down, broken. And eventually you're going to end up with some kind of overuse injury, or worse, you're going to end up with a fucking rupture. You're going to be one of those scary videos on Instagram of someone's pec fucking the whole pec disfigures. Yeah, you don't want to be that guy. That's a horrifying fucking injury. So also critical for high performers is whether they're doing GLP-1s, training, stress, aging, it all degrades tissue. So the stress that we're putting on our body degrades our tissues. These can help bring it back. So BPC 157 is the body protection compound 157. It's a 15 amino acid peptide derived naturally from a protein found in the human gastric juice. So this is something that occurs naturally in you, which makes it probably a much safer bet because your body produces it naturally. So if it was dangerous to your body, it probably would not be existing and being created by your body. Is a pretty fair assumption. There's been excellent preclinical evidence, 36 studies from 1993 to 2024, covering tendon, ligament, muscle, bone, gut, nerve, right? So the mechanisms it promotes enogenesis via a certain pathway, which it enhances fibroblast activity, right? So it basically floods the area with new cells and modulates nitric oxide so that it can flush out the damaged tendons. And it also downregulates inflammation, right? So the inflammatory response, which becomes counterproductive when you're starting to heal, allows it to accelerate collagen remodeling. So it allows it to like actually accelerate the process of your body creating new collagen and synthesizing new collagen synthesis, building new tendons, ligaments. So actually rebuilding itself at a fundamental level. And that's why I say that these drugs are going to change the medical industry, because things like, okay, so, oh man, I hurt my shoulder. I tore my rotator cuff. And it's like, well, okay, well, John, the orthopedist, is going to get, $600,000 to do this rotator cuff surgery. And then they're going to have you on meds for the next, year. And then they're going to have you on PT. And then, so it's $1 billion industry, right? And think about the fact that as they optimize these drugs and they become more and more readily available, instead of looking as our first line of action against like a torn or damaged tendon in a shoulder or an elbow or a knee or whatever, it's like, hey man, we're going to put you on a 3-month cycle of a stack of different peptides. And rather than we're going to cut in there and we're going to put in a cadaver tendon or fucking sketchily scrape your bone and reattach and put screws in, and you know what I mean? Like, butcher your body, putting in all this new shit and cause a bunch of osteoarthritis and a bunch of other downstream issues. We're just going to, give you some shots in the shoulder and it's going to regenerate itself, right? It's just going to regrow all this damaged tissue. And that's why I'm saying, like, over the next 15 years, like, this is the future. It's absolutely crazy to think about, and we're just on the cutting edge of it right now. So there was a really cool study that I like that where they studied. It was an Achilles tendon study, right? So BPC said it was in rats, and this is the problem. So there's not many human trials because the FDA keeps cock blocking human trials. But it was treated rats showing significantly higher load to tendon failure and better functionality scores. So basically, torn Achilles tendon, they treated it with BPC 157. They treated other ones with surgery, more traditional methods. And the BPC treated rat showed significantly higher load to tendon failure ratios. So after the tendon the tendon repaired itself and then could withstand loads better, and functionality scores. So it actually restored itself back to its original function, which is fascinating because anybody that's ever had a surgery, me included, I've had 2 on my knee, knows that joint is absolutely never the fucking same after it gets operated on. I operate with it, but it hurts, it aches, it gives me problems. It's always a concern. It's always something I'm thinking about. It's always something that's in my head. It's just never the same after you get something cut on, right? And then, it's arthritic, so some days it hurts. It's just something you deal with post-surgery, right? So BPC 157, and I quote, enhances growth hormone receptor expression in several pathways involved in cellular growth and enogenesis while reducing inflammatory cytokines, right? That's emerging use of, that's an orthopedic sports medicine, 2024 systematic review. So human data, very limited, but there were 4 to 16 patients with knee pain reported significant relief after BPC 157 injections, maintained 6 months to 1 year later. So they kept checking in with them for a year, and they were fine. So, and for more context there, some of those were everything. They were MCL injuries, they were ACL injuries, they were meniscus injuries. And what they were actually doing was they were actually having a doctor shoot into the joint capsule. So they were taking a longer needle and they were going into the joint capsule and injecting BPC 157 directly into the joint capsule, and it basically repaired them at a cellular level, right? So another super interesting thing that I see a lot of people struggling with is gut health, right? So a lot of us are bloated, a lot of us are dealing with all kinds of gut issues, right? So there's serious evidence that BPC 157 specifically supports the rebuilding and the repair of the GI lining, right? So this is directly relevant to anyone that's having these issues, and specific people managing GLP-1, gastrointestinal side effects, right? So, and then last but not least here is we'll wrap up on this one is TB 500, right? So thymosin beta 4 fragment, right? So this is a synthetic fragment, so this does not occur naturally in the human body of a certain molecule that does, a protein involved in cytoskeleton organization, right, and cellular repair, right. So some of the key mechanisms are that it promotes actin polymerization. Sorry, that's a big word. Actin is one of the strands found in your muscle fibers. Actin and myosin makes up your muscle fibers, which drives cell migration to injury sites, right. So it drives in healing and repairing cells to injury sites. And this recruits progenitor cells, and it stems and it basically creates supports some stem cell migration. Sorry. Sorry, guys. Oh, I skipped forward ahead there. My bad. And it's going to reduce scar tissue formation and preserve tissue flexibility and function as you heal. So this is particularly effective for muscle tears, overuse injuries, connective tissue injuries, recovery from hard training blocks, and low molecular weight means it distributes systematically, not just local to the injection. So you literally can do like a subcutaneous injection in your stomach, and it's systemic. It will move through your whole body. So a lot of people will take TB 500 because, as you can see it's two very different mechanisms of action there on how they repair the body. So a lot of people with injuries will run TB 500 and BPC 157 together, and then Glow just throws in GHKU, the copper peptide, basically, which has more of the collagen synthesis elements to it. So it kind of blends the three of them together. But yeah, so this is like absolutely, like I've said, it's the future. So there's a million other peptides out there. I don't really experiment with a whole bunch of them until they have some good research behind them, or at least some really good anecdotal research and have been used for a while. So I can't speak on all of them. Like I said, we're on the cutting edge of this. There's neuroprotective peptides. There's peptides for focus. There's peptides for memory. I think peptides are going to solve and heal a lot of the world's diseases and stuff that's going on right now. There's some really interesting research going on, but like I said, I kind of stick to the basics. The fat loss peptides, the metabolic rebuilder, and then the recovery peptides, just because that's what I'm super well researched in and I'm super comfortable with. But again, like, these are something that, you like, obviously I'm not a doctor, so nothing, this is all just like hypothetical and things that maybe I would do to myself. But I'm not giving you medical advice that you should get that from a doctor, from somebody who went and sat in some university and got propagandized for fucking 15 years. And they can tell you whether you should do it or not. And, take that as you may. But, this is from me personally, my own personal research, my own personal use and application, and what I've seen these things do for a lot of people. They're very common in the fight world. They're very common in the bodybuilding world, and just kind of in the overall biohacking and human optimization world. And I've seen some pretty crazy things. Like, I mean, I've seen a guy, one of my jujitsu coaches had tore his rear delt. It was his Terry's muscle. So it's kind of like the little lat back here. And I mean, it was like indented. It was like, it was torn. It was literally torn. Like, and he ran BPC 157 TB 500 on it. And like 3 weeks later, he was on the mat rolling. And I was like, get the fuck out of here. And that's what really got me interested in it and doing research on it. And he was like lifting his arm up overhead. And he's like, yeah, I feel great. And I'd had a shoulder injury before, and it took me like 2 years to recover from it naturally just doing PT. So I was like, man, so that was kind of what like turned me onto it and got me really interested in it. But yeah, man, so take it as you may, do your research, think about it. But that's kind of like that's my TED talk for the day, guys. So I went longer than I had expected, but I'm gonna go ahead and open the floor here for some questions if you guys have any of them.
Yeah, what was the other thing in Glow? Or is it called Clo or Glow?
You know, that's a great question. I believe it's called Glow, GLOW. But I've seen it spelled both ways. So it's GHK. It's GHK dash CU is the other component, also known as copper.
Okay.
And that's just a blend of the three at a very reasonable dose for those three.
You said GHU-CU?
GHK
Oh, shoot. Sorry.
dash CU.
Stupid spell check keeps changing it.
Oh yeah, it doesn't like fucking acronyms.
And I think Chantel asked, where are you getting it from?
So that is the hard part. Sorry, I missed if you use it. Okay. Okay, where do you get yours? So that is the hard part. There has been a few labs online. There's a lot of different online sources. So right now, they're not illegal. They are not FDA approved. So they fall into a weird gray area, which means that you can't be prescribed them, right? Technically, although some of the, and that's where I get it is the anti-aging and health clinics, places like that do the TRT, and do a lot of that kind of stuff will they have a loophole around them, so they don't actually prescribe them to you. It's like these are for your research purposes, because they are approved for that's their research chemicals. They're approved for research use. So the problem with that, and the only caveat that I add to it, so there are a million websites online, and some of them are legit, some of them are not. The problem with that is purity of source, right? So peptides are not super bioavailable in like an oral form, unfortunately. They're typically require an injection, and anytime you're doing an injection, you're basically going around your body's natural defense mechanisms for pathogens. So you want to make sure that you're injecting something that is sterile, that was created in a sterile environment, ideally a professional lab, not, somebody's basement or, somebody's fucking kitchen counter or something. Because there is always a risk of infection. Even with a great injection, there's a risk of infection, very mild, but it is there. So yeah, so sources are going to be like your like I use Matrix Hormones. There's a few other out there. I believe there's even a local one that I will message him. One of my clients goes to a local place out in the valley. And I can't fucking might be Precision Health. But I'll message him and see what's up. But there are like those anti-aging clinics are what you want to look for, testosterone TRT clinics, things like that. Those kind of places are where you're going to get high quality sources that you can be pretty sure of. You know what I mean? Because they're going to third party test them, and they're going to be getting them from reputable sources that are creating them for actual like human use, even though they're not technically for human use. Does that
How
answer your
much are you?
question?
Yeah, how much are you paying for the Glow?
About 200 for it's a pricey one. It's about 200 a vial. And a vial will typically last somewhere from 1 to 2 months.
Okay.
But it's something you cycle, so it's something you don't do permanently. So like it's something you would do like a vial and then take a break. You do like a vial and take a break, maybe 2 vials at the most. If you were like, if I had like a really like an acute injury that I was recovering from, if I'm just doing like overall recovery and like gut health and like that, yeah, I'll just do 1 vial, low dose, and drag it out for like 2 or 3 months. You can be a little more aggressive if you have like an actual like your knee, if you're actually trying to like heal your knee. You could probably triple the dosage and still be within the very safe margins of it. So yeah, just kind of depends on usage. So yeah. But yeah, no, it's like a couple hundred a vial.
Okay. And is there anything bad about not cycling it, just taking it continually?
Um, e- so yes and no. It depends on the compound. Some of them are safe to be used year round and have been studied like that. HCG is one of them. Honestly, BPC 157 is probably one of them because it occurs naturally in the body. So, it's something that your body's gonna be really tolerant towards. So you could run it all the time. I would not run copper and TB 500 year round. I just wouldn't. I just wouldn't risk it. Just because they're not naturally occurring. They are very effective, but that copper does can kind of accumulate in the body over time, and it's just something you want to kind of let your body sensitize. Also, you get a desensitization effect, so that's the other side. Just like anything, alcohol, drugs, anything that you do for a long time, your body becomes less and less, becomes more and more resistant to it. You build up a tolerance. So it is good to break that up, just even for that, even if it is something that's safe, and because effectiveness goes down over time. You know what I mean? So you'll start to notice that, and these things aren't cheap. So then you're spending a good amount of money for something that's no longer effective.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Whereas if you let your body resensitize and then run it again, then you're going to get a better effect, right? So you're going to get some repair on your tendons and all that stuff. Then you take a break, you let your body resensitize, and then that process is kind of, now your body is kind of like resensitized to it. So then you get that a really good healing effect again.
Perfect.
But I mean, like the fat loss ones, I mean, like I said, that study was for 68 weeks. So it's over a year that they ran those straight. And that's normal. Like the way they prescribe GLP ones and twos, it's basically almost permanent. I mean, they use them as diabetic drugs. That's how you can get them prescribed to you. So if it's weight loss strictly, you have to buy them yourself. If it's diabetic prescription, then sometimes you can get it covered by your insurance. So, and it's basically just something like you're going to run this for the rest of your life. So, it's not that there's not precedent for running them indefinitely. I'm just a personal fan of letting your body resensitize and giving your body breaks from anything you're doing, whether it's alcohol, whether it's tobacco, whether it's over the counter drugs, whether it's Tylenol. It's like I think just anything in moderation and anything with breaks is going to be better and safer and more effective than just running something indefinitely and trusting it. And cool, I'm gonna look in the chat. I answered those questions. Anybody else got any questions? If you do, you can just unmute yourself. If not, no worries. Appreciate you guys showing up. We had a good show out here tonight. I hope this was valuable. I hope it helped. Like I said, peptides we're on the cutting edge of the next big revolution, and I think it's going to be a really good one in medicine and in just overall recovery and all that. Cool, guys. Well, thank you so much for showing up. I'm going to get the fuck out of here. It is getting late for me. You guys have a fantastic night, and we will see you again next week. Later, guys.